I never set out to keep my success a secret. Life just unfolded that way. Growing up in the heart of Australia, my parents taught me early on that hard work and education were the keys to a better life. My father often said, "Knowledge is the one thing no one can ever take away from you," as he drove his taxi deep into the night, working extra shifts to pay for my school fees. My mother juggled 3 jobs, quietly sacrificing her comfort to ensure I never lacked what I needed to succeed. They never complained. They just worked, believing their struggles would eventually build a brighter future for me. Their faith paid off. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make their sacrifices count. Years later, I graduated at the top of my finance class and secured a coveted role at one of Asia's most prominent banks. By the age of 30, I had become the youngest division head in the company's history, managing a portfolio worth over $22 billion in corporate loans. It was a major achievement, but not one I wore on my sleeve. Few people outside of my professional circle knew this side of my life. I never sought attention or praise. I just kept going. On weekends, I liked to escape the formality of corporate life. I often helped out at my friend's small cafe, a cozy little place tucked away on a quiet street. I found joy in the simple rhythm of making coffee, wiping down tables, and chatting with regulars. It grounded me and reminded me of who I was beneath the titles and numbers. That's where I met Vincent. He walked in one rainy morning, his hair damp, his smile easy. He ordered a latte, and when I handed it to him, I had drawn a little heart in the foam without even thinking. "This is the best coffee I've had in months," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine warmth. I smiled back and said, "The secret is making it with care." From that day on, he came back every weekend. We started talking first just in passing, then longer conversations. He was an architect, passionate about designing sustainable buildings that could shape a better future. He spoke about his dreams, his close-knit family, and the things that made him laugh. With him, I didn't feel the need to impress. He saw me not for what I had achieved, but simply for who I was. When Vincent finally asked me out, I didn't hesitate. Our first date wasn't fancy. It was at a hawker center, where we shared steaming plates of char kway teow and laughed about everything and nothing. I fell for his honesty, his kindness, and the way he treated everyone around him with respect, regardless of their status. Before I met his family, Vincent gave me a quiet warning.
"They're a bit old school," he said.
"They care a lot about status and careers. Just be prepared." I told him not to worry. I was confident I could handle it. But I wasn't ready for Logan Robinson. Vincent's father was a towering figure in every sense, a real estate tycoon who seemed to command every room he entered. His presence was sharp and commanding, his opinions clear and often unfiltered. His wife, Patricia, was just as formidable. Impeccably dressed and perfectly poised, she exuded an air of polished perfection. Their daughter, Elizabeth, mirrored her mother, elegant, composed, and coolly dismissive from the moment we were introduced. At that moment, I realized this wasn't going to be easy. Their world was different from mine. While I had built my success from the ground up, they seemed to measure worth in ways I had never subscribed to, by heritage, status, and appearances. But I reminded myself of who I was, where I came from, and the values that shaped me, and that is where the real story began. When I mentioned that I worked at a cafe, the air in the dining room seemed to freeze. Then, Logan's voice rang out loud and clear across the long table, dripping with disbelief. "Vincent, I thought you said she went to university." Vincent tried to answer calmly.
"She did, Dad."
"Sarah has a degree in finance." Clearly not putting it to good use, Logan interrupted, his tone sharp. "In this family, we believe in ambition, in excellence, not in serving coffee." Vincent's face turned red, but he didn't say anything. I could feel his frustration sitting silently beside mine. Patricia, ever the master of subtle cruelty, reached up and touched her pearl necklace, a habit I'd come to recognize as a signal she was about to say something carefully veiled in fake concern. "Dear," she said, looking at me with a tight smile, "perhaps you could find a position more suitable. The cleaning company we use is always hiring." Elizabeth, sitting opposite me, let out a small snicker. At least she'd get health insurance, she added under her breath, loud enough for the table to hear. I kept my expression calm. Years of managing billions-dollar negotiations had taught me to control my emotions, even in the face of thinly veiled insults. I straightened my back and smiled politely. I enjoy my work, I said. But thank you for your concern. The rest of the dinner was a blur of passive-aggressive comments, condescending advice, and carefully calculated jabs meant to make me feel small. On the way home, Vincent apologized again and again. They'll come around, he said. They just need time to get to know you. But they didn't. As Vincent and I grew closer over the following year, his family's coldness only deepened. Every family event felt like a test I was destined to fail. Logan never missed a chance to remind everyone that I worked in a cafe, as if it were the one detail that defined me. Patricia always made sure I was seated as far away from the important guests as possible, and Elizabeth seemed to take pleasure in dropping subtle hints that Vincent could do better. Then Vincent proposed. I still remember Logan's face when he found out. His anger came fast and loud. "A cafe worker?" he shouted. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Vincent stayed calm, but firm. "I love her, Dad. That's all that matters." Logan's voice dropped low and bitter. "Love won't maintain this family's standing. If you marry her, don't expect any support from me." And he meant it. Logan and Patricia refused to attend our wedding. Elizabeth didn't even send a message. But Vincent chose me anyway. We had a small, beautiful ceremony filled with genuine joy, surrounded by people who loved us, not for what we had, but for who we were. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. And that made it perfect. Months passed. I continued my quiet routine, managing complex financial portfolios during the week, and on weekends, I returned to the cafe. Something was healing in the simplicity of it. The warmth of the coffee machine, the rhythm of small talk with regulars, and the comfort of doing something with my hands. Vincent understood. He never questioned why I chose to keep my professional life private. He respected my need to be seen and loved for the person behind the title, not just the woman behind the billions. Then came the annual Robinson family reunion. "We have to go," Vincent said gently. "They're still family." I hesitated, but deep down I hoped he was right. Maybe time had changed things. Maybe they'd come to understand what Vincent had seen in me from the beginning. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally ready to see me for who I truly was. I was wrong to hope things would be different. The reunion was held at Logan's sprawling mansion, a grand estate that reeked of old money and carefully curated power. From the moment we arrived, I could feel the judgment in the air. It was subtle but sharp, eyes scanning me, smiles too tight, whispers just loud enough to hear. "Oh, the cafe girl still around?" Elizabeth's voice floated across the garden, polished and poisonous. "Still hasn't found a real job? How persistent." Logan stood near the fountain, champagne glass in hand, surrounded by guests in designer suits and silk dresses. He raised his glass for the annual family toast, proudly rattling off achievements of the Robinson dynasty, new deals, new expansions, new properties. He didn't look at me once. Then his eyes landed on Vincent and lit up, not with warmth, but with opportunity. "Ah, Vincent, come, tell everyone about your new project." His voice was loud and commanding. Then, without missing a beat, his gaze slid past Vincent and landed on me. "And your wife, perhaps she can help serve the drinks. It's what she's good at after all." Laughter rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Vincent opened his mouth to speak, but before he could get a word out, a sudden disturbance near the house caught everyone's attention. One of Logan's assistants ran toward him, face pale, phone in hand. "Mr. Robinson, I'm sorry, but this is urgent. A call from the bank." "Not now." Logan waved her off. "We're celebrating." "Sir, it's about the emergency loans. They've been denied." Logan's smile froze. "That's not possible. I spoke with the division head myself yesterday. The new CEO is reviewing all flagged accounts personally," she said, her voice shaking. "They've requested a meeting. Tomorrow morning." At that moment, I felt my phone vibrate. A message from my own office. I stepped away from the gathering to answer. Yes, I whispered into the phone. Ma'am, my assistant said quickly. Wilson Development's financials are worse than we thought. The audit shows systematic misrepresentation of assets. It's big. Send me the full report, I replied calmly. I'll go through everything tonight. When I returned to the garden, the atmosphere had shifted. Logan was on the phone, his usual arrogance now replaced by obvious panic. Patricia stood close by, wringing her hands. Her signature pearl necklace twisted anxiously around her fingers. Elizabeth drifted toward me, her voice syrupy with fake sympathy. Looks like Daddy's company is in trouble, she said. But I wouldn't expect you to understand business. More champagne. I smiled politely. No, thank you. But I do have a question. She raised an eyebrow. How's your position at your father's company going? I'm Executive Vice President of Operations, she said proudly. Interesting, I replied. And what exactly do you do? Her confident smile faltered for the first time. I oversee things. Important things. Like the shell companies in the Cayman Islands? I asked smoothly. Or the fake property valuations hiding massive debt? Her champagne glass slipped from her hand, crashing onto the marble floor. Heads turned. She leaned in, eyes wide and furious. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not, I said gently. But I do. Before she could respond, Logan's voice cut through the air again. Party's over. Family emergency. Guests began to disperse quickly, murmuring among themselves. Logan turned to Vincent, his face tight with desperation. Son, he said, pulling him aside, I need your help. The bank is being unreasonable. Your architecture firm, you must have contacts with other lenders. Vincent shifted uncomfortably. Dad, we're a small team. We design buildings. We don't handle major financial deals. Logan exploded. Useless. Just like your choice of a wife. If I lose this company, it'll be your fault for bringing bad luck into this family. That was enough. I stepped forward, phone in hand, my expression calm. Mr. Robinson, I said clearly, we have a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. He glanced at me annoyed. This doesn't concern you, coffee girl. I opened my banking app and turned the screen toward him. Actually, it does. There was a long pause as he read the title beneath my name. Sarah Wilson, CEO, Corporate Banking Division, Australia, United Bank. Silence fell across the garden like a heavy curtain. Patricia dropped her pearls. Elizabeth looked like she might faint. Logan's face twisted in disbelief. That's not possible, he muttered. It is, I replied softly. Your loan applications came across my desk last week. The inconsistencies raised several red flags. Vincent turned to me, stunned. Sarah, all this time? I never wanted to be loved for my title or my bank account, I said gently. I wanted to be loved for who I am. You gave me that. Your family didn't. There was a long pause before Logan's survival instincts kicked in. His tone shifted, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said slowly, this is wonderful news. We're all family here, Logan said, his voice forced into something resembling warmth. Surely, we can work something out. Family? I echoed, my tone calm but cold. Like when you called me a gold digger at my wedding reception. Or when you told your business associates that Vincent married beneath his station. Patricia stepped forward, arms reaching out like she was offering comfort. Darling, we were only trying to protect our son. Surely, you can understand that. Oh, I understand perfectly, I replied. You didn't know me. You didn't try to know me. You judged me, mocked me, and treated me like I didn't belong because you assumed I had nothing to offer. And now, suddenly, you need me. Elizabeth chimed in, her voice coated in false sweetness. Sarah, sweetie, we were just teasing. It was never serious. It was all in good fun. I turned to Vincent. Did you know what your sister's role is in the company? He looked confused. She said she was in charge of operations. She's been helping her father hide debt and inflate the value of the company's assets. The audit uncovered years of manipulation and cover-ups. Logan's face turned a deep shade of purple. Now see here, young lady. You can't just. I can. And I will. I cut in firmly. Tomorrow's meeting isn't just about loan applications anymore. It's about a fraud investigation. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't dare, we're family. I let out a quiet laugh, more sad than amused. Let me share something my father once told me. The father you mocked for being a taxi driver. He said true family lifts you, believes in you, and stands by you no matter how much money you make or what title you hold. You've done none of that. I reached for Vincent's hand. The authorities will be in touch tomorrow. I suggest you call your lawyers. As we turned to leave, Patricia's voice rang out, trembling and desperate. Wait, what about Elizabeth? She was just following orders. She didn't mean harm. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. Actions have consequences, Patricia. Elizabeth chose to be part of this. She'll face the same investigation as the rest of you. We walked out without another word. The drive home was quiet. The weight of the evening settled in like a heavy fog. After a while, Vincent finally spoke, his voice soft. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him carefully. Would you have treated me the same way if you knew? Would you have fallen in love with who I am or what I do? He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he answered, No. I fell in love with you. Not your job. Not your title. Just you. That's why I fell in love with you, too, I said, squeezing his hand. I'm sorry for keeping it from you. I needed to know it was real. That we were real. Vincent nodded. So, what happens now? I took a deep breath. Your father's company will be investigated. With the evidence we have, there's a strong chance there will be criminal charges. If Elizabeth's involved and the audit says she is, she could face the same. And us? He asked, turning to me. That depends, I said with a half smile. Can you handle being married to a woman who makes more than your entire family combined? Vincent burst out laughing, the tension finally breaking. I think I'll manage. But from that day forward, there were no more secrets. I made a promise, to myself and Vincent, that everything would be out in the open. No more hiding. No more pretending. The next morning marked the beginning of the end for the Wilson family empire. At exactly 10 a.m., Logan arrived at my office, flanked by a team of lawyers. Gone was the proud, booming tycoon I'd once met. In his place was a man who finally realized that power, without integrity, meant nothing. For the first time, he sat quietly, knowing he no longer controlled the room. I slid a thick folder across the desk. The audit uncovered 6 years of financial fraud, I said steadily. Falsified property values, hidden debt, shell corporations, it's all here. One of his lawyers cleared his throat, trying to speak. We can explain. No. I cut in. You won't explain this to me. The evidence has already been sent to the authorities. Logan leaned forward, desperation flickering in his eyes. Sarah, please. Think of the family name. This will destroy everything. I looked him straight in the eyes. Did you think about my name when you stood in a room full of strangers and called me a gold digger? When you told your business partners I wasn't good enough for your son? Before he could answer, my secretary knocked gently. Ma'am, she said, the police are here. What followed was chaos. News spread like wildfire. Wilson Development's CEO arrested for fraud made the front pages. The media had a field day. Cameras captured everything. Logan being escorted out in handcuffs, stone-faced and silent. Elizabeth was arrested shortly after. She clutched her designer handbag like a lifeline, lips trembling as she was led out by officers. Patricia had a very public breakdown at the country club, the same one where she once hosted exclusive charity galas. The life they'd built on image and arrogance was collapsing, piece by piece. Through it all, Vincent stood by my side. I knew it hurt him to watch his family fall apart, but he never once blamed me. They did this to themselves, he said one night as we watched another news report. You didn't ruin anything. You just exposed the truth. Weeks became months. The investigation dug even deeper than I had imagined. Logan had been using inflated property values to secure large loans, then quietly funneling the money through offshore shell companies. Elizabeth had helped him coordinate everything, hiding behind her impressive title while acting as a puppet in the scheme. Her executive position had been a cover, nothing more. When the trial came, it moved quickly. The evidence was too strong to deny. Logan was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Elizabeth got 6. Patricia wasn't charged, but the financial fallout hit her hardest. Everything they owned, cars, homes, jewelry, investments, was seized. In the end, she was left with nothing. One quiet afternoon, as autumn painted the trees in warm gold across Australia's gardens, Patricia appeared at my office. She was barely recognizable. Gone were the designer heels, the pearls, the stiff elegance. She wore a simple cotton blouse and carried a cloth handbag. "I know I have no right to be here," she said, her voice soft and cracked. "But I needed to say something." I nodded and gestured for her to continue. "I was wrong about you," she whispered. "So wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "We judged you because you didn't fit our world, because we thought money and status were the only things that mattered. But I've lost it all now. I live in a small apartment. I work part-time at a department store just to get by. And now I finally understand. None of that ever mattered." She looked at me, shame written all over her face. "What matters is who you are, not what you own. And you were kind, even when we didn't deserve it." I sat in silence, letting her words settle like dust after a storm. In that moment, there was no victory, no gloating, just truth. Painful, honest truth, and sometimes that's the most powerful kind of justice. "Even when we were cruel," Patricia said quietly, her eyes shining with unshed tears, "you could have destroyed us completely. But you didn't. You let the law do what it was meant to do. That's real class." I studied her face in that moment, and for the first time, I saw it. Real remorse. Not polished, not rehearsed. Just raw, honest regret. "What do you want, Patricia?" I asked gently. "A chance," she whispered. "Not to make things perfect. God knows I don't deserve that, but just a chance to say I'm sorry."
To you.
To Vincent. To try, somehow, to be a better person. 8 months later, we hosted a small dinner gathering at our home. Nothing fancy, just good food, soft music, and laughter that didn't feel forced. Patricia arrived quietly, holding a warm tray of homemade dumplings. She had learned to make them in her new life, one built on humility and starting over. She was different now.
Softer.
More real. She didn't wear designer labels anymore, but there was a quiet Mary about her that hadn't existed before. Vincent had begun to heal too. He visited his father and sister in prison, not to forget what happened, but to face it. He was working through years of pain and dysfunction, one step at a time. Forgiveness didn't come easy, but he was trying. That mattered more than anything. As for me, I still worked weekend shifts at the cafe. Not because I was hiding anymore. Not because I needed to feel normal. I stayed because I loved it, the simplicity of it, the connection. There's something beautiful about making someone's day just a little better with a warm cup of coffee and a kind word. One morning, a young woman walked in, her shoulders slumped and eyes tired. I could tell she was carrying something heavy. "Rough day?" I asked, drawing a small heart in the foam of her latte. She sighed. "My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough. Wrong background, wrong job, everything." I smiled, remembering where my own story began. "Let me tell you a little story," I said, "about pride, family, and what matters in the end. Because life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons in the hardest ways. Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what we truly value." Logan and Elizabeth learned that behind prison walls. Patricia learned it through the quiet humbling of life, without status. And me? I learned that being true to yourself, no matter what anyone says, is worth more than every cent in a bank account. Now, Vincent and I are expecting our first child. We've decided to name her Mary, a reminder that even in the hardest moments, a little mercy can go a long way. Patricia is overjoyed to be a grandmother. She shows up often with her dumplings and a gentle smile. And even Logan, through his prison letters, seems to be reflecting on the legacy he wants to leave behind. The cafe still stands on that quiet street corner, a humble reminder of where our story truly began. Sometimes customers recognize me. "Are you the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends?" they ask, half incredulous. I always smile. "Yes," I tell them, because every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day better. And when you think about it, isn't that what matters in the end?
Some understand.
Some don't. But that's okay. I know my truth. Success, to me, isn't about power, revenge, or proving anyone wrong. It's about being who you are fully honestly. It's about kindness, especially when it isn't earned. And it's about remembering that even those who hurt us are still people, capable of change. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe. The sunrise is spilling through the windows, painting the city in soft gold and quiet promise. Vincent will be here soon, just like he is every weekend. Maybe Patricia will stop by with her dumplings. Maybe not. Life isn't perfect, but it's real. And it's rich with lessons, with second chances, and with Mary. And sometimes, while I'm brewing coffee or signing off on billions-dollar deals, I remember my father's words, "Knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you." He was right. But there's something else they can't take either. Your integrity, your compassion, and the courage to stay true to yourself. Those are the real treasures. And they're mine to keep.